this morning by Dean Thompson and Lewis Duke, who will introduce themselves a little later on. Now, for the webinar today, we're focusing on cybersecurity transformation, and in particular how the COVID-19 situation has driven the need to adapt to what many people are calling the new normal. Now, O2, as part of the Telefonica Group, is part of a global cybersecurity business, and we provide enterprise organizations with managed security services, technology, and support in the UK and globally. And in my job, everything that I do is external, so it's helping those organizations solve cybersecurity problems with the services and technology that we can provide. And it's through that what we've seen is it's very clear in recent months that priorities have changed rapidly for many organizations. So the COVID-19 situation has brought certain cyber projects right to the top of the priority stack very quickly, while others that may have been a priority a few months ago might have taken a back seat. Now, in the short term and the long term, transformation is happening in many areas of organizations, and this may present a significant opportunity for cybersecurity professionals to both enhance and simplify their organization's approach to security. So that's what we're going to explore today. So after I've finished the introduction and covering some of the phases of security concern that we've been through in recent months, I will hand over to Lewis Duke, who will talk you through some of the current threats to be aware of and some of the things that we are seeing as an MSSP. And then it will be over to Dean to cover how organizations can embrace cybersecurity transformation. And then finally, we'll finish off with a Q&A. So in recent months, we've seen organizations go through various phases of security concern. And of course, this path that's on the screen hasn't been the path for all organizations. And for some, parts of this may have been more amplified, with other parts less so. But in general, what we saw first was the shock phase. And this was where quick decisions were made to allow businesses to continue through the disruption. So for many, the primary concern was how to get people working from home productively and securely. Now, for some, this might have been a relatively straightforward flex of an existing secure remote access solution, but for others, it's involved completely reassessing their infrastructure and their network capacity. And then the stability phase was where, for those that were forced to implement new systems or new processes, and for the end users that were interacting with them, they went through a learning process to optimize what was in place. And this was set against the acknowledgement that things weren't going back to normal anytime soon, hence the phrase, the new normal. And this was also the time for some where there was an acceptance that the sticking plasters that they had put in place weren't going to be good enough longer term. So taking the example of home working again, proper projects around secure remote access came to the fore, with the user experience being a key driver as well as security. Whereas in the shock phase, maybe the initial response was to try and get everybody a VPN token, and that quite quickly led to capacity issues for some. And then if you look at where we are now, lots of organizations find themselves in another phase of transition where users are starting to go back to fixed places of work. And for global organizations, this might already be more fluid compared to those that operate in just one country. And then there's the longer term future. So from the research that O2, the report that O2's published, we found that 81% of employees expect to work from home at least one day a week in the future. But it's not just about home working, and looking more broadly, economic uncertainty might provide both threats and opportunities depending on the organization. And throughout this whole process, there will be a continuous evaluation of what's working for the business, what's working for the IT and security teams, and what's working for the end users as well. And what we've been through so far might have started to expose gaps or weaknesses in security technology and processes, but it also represents potentially an opportunity for security transformation. Now, everything I've mentioned so far has been quite inward-looking, but of course, when it comes to proactive cybersecurity, it's not just about putting protections in place for your people and for your critical assets. It's also about looking outwardly, and that's at general threats and specific threats that could affect your organization. By doing that, you can put in adaptive defenses. And with that, I'm going to introduce Lewis Duke to cover some more on the threats that we're seeing as a global MSSP. So, hello, Lewis.
Thanks, Harry, and good morning, everybody. So my name's Lewis Duke, and I'm the Cyber Security Lead, and I work out of our Northampton Security Operations Centre. And as you can see there on the slide, we're part of a global network of 12 SOCs run by Telefonica Group. My role includes looking after a number of managed security services, including our very own cyber threat intelligence service. And I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of some of the trends in the cybersecurity landscape that have appeared in light of the coronavirus pandemic. And I just want to cover off a couple of key observations that we're seeing from our perspective as a global MSSP and from some of our industry partners. And the main observation is that although there has been the inevitable use of coronavirus-themed lures by attackers, the actual number of cyber threats has not significantly increased. Instead, what we're seeing is that attackers have simply shifted their campaign models to make use of the current crisis. And just to give you some idea of the scale of this shift and to put some numbers on it, so Proofpoint have recently reported that coronavirus-related lures make up over 80% of the threat landscape. And that's including phishing, business email compromise, and video conferencing attacks. And that is a massive shift. And just to add some more weight to those figures, Google have released a statement to say that they're blocking over 240 million coronavirus-themed spam messages a day and approximately 18 million malware and phishing emails on their mail platforms. That's Gmail. And the research team over at Palo Alto, which is Unit 42, so they're currently tracking over 116,000 newly registered coronavirus-related domains, of which 35%, well, over 35% of those are deemed to be either malicious or high-risk sites. So much of this shift is what you'd expect, sort of the phishing and smishing, pretending to be from government or healthcare professionals, and things such as fake event refunds. And of course, with the government sending out the SMS messages to everybody, it was a good window for the attackers and expected. We expect them to make use of those. However, there have been some of the less expected trends. One of those is the increase in targeting of Bluetooth vulnerabilities. And this seems to be an attempt to exploit some of the track and trace applications that are going out. And if we combine this and then look at the fact that companies are being forced to adopt home working, they've had to undergo digital transformation at an extremely accelerated pace. Microsoft themselves have been quoted saying that they've achieved 2 years of transformation in just 2 months. And with this rapid and widespread shift, there's inevitably going to be some associated risks there. And as we look to the future, as I mentioned with the phases, we've got the gradual return to office working. And it's going to highlight where some of these security gaps have been created, where we've got potentially substandard security on devices for those who may have had to change hardware from desktops to laptops quickly, potentially lowering or even bypassing certain security controls to get those devices and those solutions out there. And then we've also got the situation where we've got employees able to use corporate devices on their home networks without VPN connection. Home users haven't got the traditional layers of security, such as firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, and that poses a real threat. And these potential gaps in security, if we combine those with the threat actors who are looking to capitalise on the current global fears and uncertainty, it raises some serious concerns about the return of these workers to office-based locations and the risk of them potentially infected devices being returned and plugged back into core networks. So security transformation allows businesses to be more confident in their ability to mitigate these risks. I'll pass you back to Harry. Thank you.
Thank you, Lewis. So one of the things that's often talked about when it comes to technology is being ahead of the curve or being behind the curve. But when it comes to the current security considerations, because of everything that's happened in such a short space of time, important to remember that no one is behind the curve. If anything, the curve has jumped. So the principles of IT security remain the same, whichever framework you subscribe to. It's just that the context may have changed. It's likely to be the same things that security professionals were thinking about before, they're thinking about now. And there may also be just some additional challenges in terms of needing to look at security retrospectively in some areas to catch up with the changes that have been made so quickly in other areas of organisations. And now I'm going to hand over to Dean, who's going to discuss our own framework for helping organisations achieve meaningful cybersecurity transformation. So, hello, Dean.
Thank you, Harry, and good morning, everyone. My name is Dean Thompson, and I'm the head of cybersecurity here at O2 Business. So I wanted to talk in a little bit more detail about our history with cybersecurity transformation, as well as the pillars that we have built to make up that program. So, as Harry and Lewis have mentioned, although we've recently seen COVID drive forward various security transformation projects, we wanted to make it clear that this area is not new to us and that we've built specific offerings to help our customers reduce cost and the complexity that's usually associated to being cyber secure. The first large-scale cybersecurity transformation project we completed was back in 2015. This was a huge firewall consolidation project, and it was for a well-known UK outsourcer. By working closely with the O2 security team, this customer was able to significantly reduce the amount of firewalls embedded in their network. So we took that down from about 400 firewalls to approximately 100. And the benefits to the customer were simplified management, lower latency, and a reduced cost. That lower latency meant that their network was faster. Moving on to the next section. So another recent transformation project to note was where we worked with a well-known supermarket, and we delivered a UK-wide visibility and control solution. So what this did is it enabled the customer to take a highly transformative approach, securing and quarantining devices as soon as they attach to the network. The scope of devices under control range from traditional endpoints, such as laptops, desktops, and servers, all the way through to fridges, freezers, HVAC, and EPOS systems. So this customer can now easily segment and segregate devices from their network using a single control mechanism across the entire estate. And then the last thought I wanted to leave you with in this area is that we have also completed our own in-store transformation. So we have approximately 400 sites across the UK. These are the O2 stores that we all kind of know well. And we completed a 400-site networking and security transformation project recently. That resulted in all of the O2 stores being fully transformed onto a highly resilient and super fast network with all of the security built into the core. By doing this, we've been able to demonstrate significant cost savings by taking that consolidated approach. Moving on to the next slide. So in this slide, I just wanted to talk into a little bit more detail about the areas that we usually focus on when we embark upon these security transformation projects. And what we found is by getting 2 or 3 of these areas right, our customers are quickly able to reap the benefits of transformation that I described a moment ago. As with all transformation, though, there has to be a first stage. And that first stage is at the top there, which is assess and understand. We'll talk a little bit more about that in my next slide. But basically, this is where we spend a couple of hours with your networking and security teams, albeit virtually at the moment. And we run through aims, objectives, challenges, we landscape the currently deployed technologies, and then by gathering all this information, we produce a customized cybersecurity report which highlights how we can assist you in your cyber transformation. Just going into a couple of those pillars in a little bit more detail, as you can imagine, some of these lend themselves quite well towards the current situation. Anywhere, any device is a great example of one of these pillars of transformation where we're able to offer that corporate security blueprint to any device, anywhere. So wherever that user is coming in from, whether it's a BYOD device, a corporate device where he's working from home, we can ensure that that consistent security policy is applied to that user, any device, anywhere. We also have things like Security Marketplace. The Security Marketplace is where O2 has partnerships with around 30 security manufacturers. So these are all of the well-known cybersecurity providers, and we're able to resell those technologies. So we're resellers for the likes of Palo Alto, for Cisco, for Fortinet, so on and so forth. We have very good discounts in those areas, and that means we can pass the discounts on to our customers. And that helps you with transformation. By using a single supplier for security, we can help you reduce costs. And then the last one I'll talk about on here is advanced security management. So what we've seen over the last couple of years is our customers are consistently complaining and have a lot of trouble with legacy SIEM platforms. So we have really developed our capability in this area, and we're able to offer advanced security management capability. So it's the ingestion of unlimited logs and the analytics that relate to those logs. Okay, so just moving to the next slide. How can we help? So I mentioned this a moment ago. The best way that we can aid you with transformation is by sitting down with your teams and running through the O2 cybersecurity assessment. This assessment is free of charge to all O2 business customers, and it will help identify your current security status and the biggest risk areas. The report also highlights possible improvements in the management of people, processes, and technology. But during that assessment, we focus on 5 areas. The first area being security management, the second area being WAN and LAN security, the third area being endpoint security. And when we talk about endpoints, that can be anything from a mobile phone to an IoT device, also traditional laptops, desktop servers. We also cover data security, so that's data that's in the cloud or data that's on-premise. We look at emerging technology, and then we combine all of that together to give you a breach assessment. So we'll look at where we pick up any red flags in those areas I mentioned, and then we will offer a response in terms of how we feel you are postured in terms of having a breach. So if you'd like to book the assessment, please get in touch. We will share the contact information on the following slides. That will be at the end of this webinar. So now I'm going to pass you back over to Harry, who will talk about things to think about right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. So while that assessment that Dean's talking about will look at strategy and aims and objectives, here's some sort of key takeaways to perhaps consider right now. So the first one is a clear objective of any secure home working policy, which is, can you extend the same protections to people when they're inside the corporate perimeter compared to when they're connecting remotely? Now, this is potentially an opportunity now to review that. Is there anything that's being missed? Are there any additional threats to working from home and there isn't a plan in place for those? And then second, and linked to that, check individuals' security postures. So are you able to identify all assets that are being used for corporate access? So the devices, the users, how they're connecting, and importantly, in terms of where we are now, are you able to check the security status of those devices before they connect back to the corporate network? And then finally, offered training. So if you haven't reviewed your security trainings in a while, now would be a good time to do so. So tips and tricks, things to consider around COVID, things to consider when working remotely. Maybe you can run some sort of incentives or run simulated phishing exercises to sort of increasing user engagement around that. And these are all areas that O2 can help with. And on that, finally, here's some details to contact us. So I guess if LinkedIn is your thing, then feel free to reach out to any of us, send us a message through that method. But otherwise, if you've got a specific query or you want to speak to someone, then send a request into that email address, enterprisecybersec@o2.com. So that will be picked up by one of us or be someone else in the wider team, depending on what's needed and any specific expertise that's needed. And then finally, we'll go on to the Q&A. So I've got a few questions on the chat box. If anyone can think of any more questions, chuck them in there. If we don't get round to them, then we'll make sure that we definitely reach out to you personally. But the first one, how do I get in touch about cybersecurity? So yeah, just answered that. enterprisecybersec@o2.com. Next one, on the slides, you've got cyber secured by 11 paths. What is 11 paths? How does this relate to O2? Good question, good spot. So 11 paths is Telefónica's dedicated cybersecurity business, and O2 Business is the sort of go-to-market brand that you're more likely to be familiar with in the UK. So 11 paths is, it's the centralized global security business for the whole group. Like I said at the start, we offer managed security services, but the one thing I haven't mentioned is that through 11 paths, we have our own cyber labs, and that's where we actually create and develop our own, proprietary security tech ourselves. So if anybody wants to talk through that, I'd be more than happy to in a follow-up. One more on there for now. So how do I book a cyber assessment, and are there any specific criteria that I need to meet? Dean, I don't know if you want to cover that one.
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, the best way to book a cyber assessment is to use the email that we had on the previous page. If you just simply email that email saying contact me, one of us will get in touch with you, and we'll talk about booking in some time for the cyber assessment.
And any specific criteria that I need to meet?
No, in terms of criteria, we don't have any rigid kind of gotchas there, but sometimes we do find that we can do a shortened assessment depending on the size of the company. So yeah, it just might be that we end up spending less time with you. The larger the company, the more time we need to ingest all the data. Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. The only thing I'd add on that really is in terms of criteria is just the commitment from the other side, really, just in terms of having the right people in the room, or virtually in this case at the moment. So if it's security people, networking people and stuff like that, just so we can, gather the most information possible to deliver the best report out the back of it. So that's it in terms of the questions on the chat at the moment. Like I said, if there's any more that you want to chuck in there now, we'll make sure that we answer them offline, or like I said previously, email enterprisecybersec@o2.com and we can answer anything directly from there. So finally, this webinar is part of a 4-part series. We'll be sharing these slides with you after this, and at the back of these slides here, there's some links for extra content that you can download and read around these topics, and the links to the other webinars in the series. So that's connectivity, digital workplace, and collaboration. And that's it from us. So thank you very much for your participation this morning.
That does conclude our conference for today. Thank you for participating. You may all disconnect the speakers. Please stand by.